And I've invested, if I had to be honest, I've probably invested over $500,000 in self-development and coaching over the last 20 years. But you know what? It's made me several $1 million. Yeah. So is it worth it? I would say so. You know, and the thing is once you're coached and mentored, you can take that with you. So I can compound a lot of these things I learned.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Joseluiz Morales. Welcome back to the Morales Group Show. This is episode number 74. Today, we've got a very special guest. His name is Steve Rozenberg. He is a commercial pilot, real estate investor, real estate entrepreneur. He is also a coach and educator and contributor to the largest real estate podcast in the world, BiggerPockets. Welcome to the show, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Likewise. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. Before we get into the interview, I just want to remind our audience, if you've enjoyed some of our previous interviews, if you would smash that subscribe button, maybe share it with a friend if you've seen enough value. That would really help out the channel, and we look forward to providing future value. So I wanted to start off by just asking, who is Steve Rozenberg, and how did you get involved in the real estate industry?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I always tell people I'm kind of like an onion. I have a lot of layers to me as you start peeling them back. But born and raised in Los Angeles. I live in Houston, Texas now, but I'm from Los Angeles. And you know, I never really wanted to be in real estate, to be honest, or to do anything tied to real estate. As a child growing up, I only wanted to do one thing, and that was be an airline pilot. And so went to college and, went to Glendale College, went to Cal State Los Angeles, grew up wanting to fly, did all the flying stuff, got hired with an airline at 25 years old. Company is called TWA. And I was flying, all over the world doing stuff, ended up getting hired with another company called Continental Airlines, was flying out of Guam out in the South Pacific. And I had the best job in the world. To me, it was the most safe, most secure job that anyone could ask for, 401k, pension, all those things. And then a certain day in history happened, and that kind of changed everything for me, as well as a lot of other people, and that was 9/11. So the day that 9/11 hit obviously was a tragedy for everybody. For me, it was 48 hours later. That was my day of reckoning, we'll say, because that's the day I got my furlough notice. And that was the day that basically I realized that safe and secure job, it's not that safe, and it wasn't very secure. And I had been living under the thought and the illusion that it was safe and I was going to be okay, and it wasn't. And so, it's very humbling when you have when you learn your whole life to do something, and within 48 hours, it's basically ripped away from you. And they say, you know what? Thanks a lot, but you're about to be on the street with 50,000 other airline pilots, so good luck. Wow. And, unless there's an airline out there that's willing to give me a job, I have no skill set. I have no talent. All I had ever wanted to do growing up was to fly planes, and now I couldn't even do that. And so it taught me a very valuable lesson about being a very small cog in a very, very big wheel. And I kind of blamed myself. You go through these grief, anger, all these transitions of life when something bad happens. And of course, the whole country was reeling with 9/11. And I thought to myself, this had nothing to do with me, but my life is now forever changed because of something else. And it made me realize that if I wasn't in charge of my own destiny, nobody else is going to be. And so it was a big aha moment in life. And I was, 29 years old, but I realized, like, okay, I've got to take ownership of this, and I've got to be responsible, and I need to do something. And so I started looking at, what do people do that are wealthy? Like, where do they do this? And everything I was reading kept going back to real estate and back to real estate. And I thought, okay, well, obviously there's something to this, and I knew pilots that owned rental properties and stuff. So I'm like, F it, I'm going to try it. So I started reading a book a week, and I read everything I could about real estate to understand the dynamics of what it's about. And, for me, it wasn't hey, this would be kind of cool This was if I don't do this, I'm not going to be able to eat pretty soon because I'm running out of I'm running out of money. And so I started learning about real estate. I started learning about wholesaling and flipping, and I did pretty well at that. Did that for several years. Wholesaling, I learned that side of it. Did so well that I ended up having enough money to buy into an apartment complex deal. And so that was kind of my transition to being an investor, because I don't personally look at wholesaling as investing, because it's a job. I mean, when I stopped, the money stopped. And so I still kept flying. Luckily, I came within 30 numbers of the bottom of the seniority list of 6,000 pilots, and I was skimming right there for about 2 years. And I'm never going to say that's worse than losing your job, because it sucks to lose your job, but it was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I kept waiting for the mail to come to say that now you have 30 days and you're gone. So it sucked. I mean, I'm going to be honest. It was not a fun feeling. So I was in a race against time to figure out how to create this passive income. So I knew that the wholesaling was not going to make it, but it was a means to get me the money to buy an apartment complex, or to buy passive income, I should say. Ended up getting out of that, bought some single family houses. And as many people do, and I'm sure many people you've had on your show, made a lot of mistakes. Just got my butt kicked up and down the street by contractors, vendors, tenants, you name it. And of course I did what any stupid person would do. I doubled down and bought more properties because I thought I could fix it by just having more. And it was like gasoline on the fire, exploding in our faces. And then we ended up getting a business coach, and we went to our business coach, and we wanted to start managing properties because nobody would manage ours. So we had to self-manage ours. And we went to our business coach and we said, this is what we've done. Is there a business? And he basically said, yeah, there's a business here, but you two are not very smart. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know anything about business, and you guys will be bankrupt in 6 months. So we ended up hiring that guy as our business coach, as luck would have it. And we stayed with that guy for 7 years. We scaled our company to over 1,000 properties. We managed almost $200 million in assets. We were in 3 cities. We had virtual assistants all over the world. And we ended up eventually building that up and actually exiting and selling that company to a large venture capital backed company. And obviously, as you can imagine, the lessons we learned along the way were, I couldn't begin to tell you what I learned with being coached and mentored and all that stuff. But that's the quick 5-minute version of my life for the last 20 years, basically.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you if you could start off by because you went from having what you thought was a business, meaning you thought you had a business. Someone tells you, hey, look, if you continue it running like this, you're going to be out of business in 6 months. Would you mind sharing with us, what are some of the things that you learned along the way, and maybe some of the things that he said you should implement that were game changers? Because I imagine, like you, there's a lot of people in the same shoe that think that they actually have a business, but the reality is, A, the moment they stop working, the business stops. 2, they're doing a lot of the work themselves versus delegating a lot of it. So what systems did you have to implement in order to get to the point where you exited successfully?
That's a great question. So the first thing I'll tell you is, one of the things that and I've been mentored and coached by many, many different people as I've scaled different people. And one of the people that was my mentor, he said, Steve, can you walk away from your business for a day and have it keep running? And I thought, I could probably do a day. He goes, how about a month? And I'm like, no way. He goes, how about 6 months? I'm like, no way. He goes, well, then you don't have a business, you own a job. Yeah. Nothing wrong with having a job, but let's call it what it is. Let's not mince words. Let's know our definitions. A business is a commercial, profitable enterprise that runs without you. I didn't have any of those pieces. It was profitable, but it was profitable because I worked. And when I stopped working, the profit, and I wasn't counting my time. I wasn't allocating money towards my time. So yes, I was making money, but was it profitable? Depends on what I value my time at, And so it really made us realize that businesses run under the same chassis, right? So when you look at a business, you have marketing, which makes the phone ring. Yeah. Sales answers the phone and they make the conversion. Operations makes it work. And accounting makes sure that your bills are paid. So you've got 4 pieces to a business. Now, we were very fortunate in the sense that me and my business partner, we were very, very opposite. I was the visionary. He was the integrator. So I was sales and marketing. He was operations. And so because we had that distinctive difference, we were a great team. And we learned over time how to really stay in our lanes. And we really learned to play to our strengths and delegate our weaknesses. And so the thing that I have learned is that a business is something that is a repetitious task done over and over again to perfection that you're getting remunerated and you're monetizing. That's all a business is. You do it over and over again. Business is supposed to be boring. A lot of people in real estate and other things, they think it should be this craziness going on. The challenge is when it's crazy, you're in chaos. And when you're in chaos, you're not in control. And when you're not in control, you're not making money. So many people in business, and we were these people. I'm not saying anything that we didn't personally do. Many people are in reactive mode. They're constantly reacting. They're putting out fires. And one of my mentors, he owned 11 businesses. And one day we were at his 30,000 square foot house and I'm having lunch with him. And I'm like, man, how do you do this? I'm like, I don't understand. He worked Tuesdays and Thursdays. He worked 2 days a week with 11 businesses. And I'm thinking, I can't even freaking hold one down. And you got 11. I'm like, how do you do this? And how do you do it 2 days a week? And he goes, you know what it is, Steve? He goes, I'll tell you the answer. He goes, it's one word. And I'm like, okay, pins and needles. I got a pen and paper out. I'm ready to ask him. And he goes, no. And I'm like, no, what? And he's like, that's the word. I'm like, you're speaking French to me. Like, he goes, you have to say no. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, it's not a matter of saying yes to everything. It's a matter of saying no to everything and saying yes to just the important things. We all know, like the book, The One Thing and everything. Yeah. And I said, his name was Brad Sugars, owns Action Coach International. And I said, Brad, I said, that's easy for you to say because you own 11 businesses. You're this mega multimillionaire. And he said, you know what, Steve? He said, I was never this way until I learned to say no. And he goes, that's why your phone has rang 12 times sitting here and mine hasn't rang once because people know not to call me and stuff still gets done, but it doesn't get done by me. And that was a big turning point for me when you're asking like what, the challenges people have in businesses. And again, I coach people, mentor people. And the biggest challenges is everyone is reactionary. And, we all have 24 hours in a day. How we use them is the key. And so many people use them incorrectly and they use them reactively. And, when we had property managers in our business, we'd ask them like, I'm busy. Okay, well, what do you do all day? I don't know. I'm just putting out fires. Okay, well, specifically, what are you doing? I don't know. It's like, well, you're doing something and it's because you're reactionary. And so one of the things that we learned, look, when you're in real estate and you own a property management company, we used to say we are the trash men of real estate. Nobody liked us, but they needed us. We were the ones that collected rent, dealt with maintenance issues. And it's a necessity to have a professional property management company, in my opinion, if you want to scale and run it as a business, at least. And so what I realized was so many people are reactionary because they don't dictate their day. Yeah. They're not proactive. And so one of the things that we realized in running our business is we said, okay, business is all about relationships and business is all about communication. It's not 4 walls and a roof. It's the business model and the relationships that's running inside of the 4 walls and the roof. So we say, okay, there's always a lack of trust with property management companies because they're always reactionary. Owner calls, owner's pissed off, tenant calls, tenant's pissed off. Same thing in any piece of any real estate transaction. So the one thing that we learned that I'll give you a nugget on is how do you go upstream of that challenge and make that phone call never have to happen? And so we'd always ask, okay, why are they calling? They're calling because they have a maintenance issue on their property. Okay, how can we get to them first and let them know the problem's taken care of, not to make these ping pong emails and phone calls going back and forth because you're losing seconds, which is minutes, which is hours. And when you're managing 1,000 properties, you have a whole staff employee just dealing with ping pong things that if you just addressed it ahead of time, we could save a whole employee of staff and have them doing something more productive.
So what's an example of something that that you almost predicted? Because I know for my business, that's one of the things that we do is anytime we've ever experienced an issue in our business, we have said, why did this issue happen? And how can we stop this issue from happening in the future? And I'm imagining it's similar to what you're talking about. Can you give us an example of something that maybe happened often in the property management field that you were able to almost solve permanently so that you're not reacting all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, I'll use property management, but this is any business, right? This you can relate this to anything. So one of the things I've learned is that anytime something leaves your hand and it goes to someone else, it should never come back to you. So you want to be able to finish it and you're done with it when it leaves you. Okay. And so when you think about it this way, you think about, okay, if I have to send an email, how do I finish the conversation with this email and not have it come back to me? And the reason this is so important, and I'll get to your answer in a second, is your question, is 5-minute phone call is equal to 23 minutes of lost productivity. So, and you get 10 phone calls a day, that's equal to 230 minutes of lost time, which is half of your day. This is why people say, I'm always putting out fires, because you got to stop what you're doing. You got to disengage. You got to deal with the issue. Then you got to make phone calls. Then you got to re-engage, and it's 23 minutes. So an example that we had was maintenance. Maintenance is always a tough thing because as a management company, we're dealing with a tenant, we're dealing with a contractor, and we're dealing with an owner. So we have to keep 3 people happy, and everybody has a different definition of happiness, and everyone is an emergency and a priority, right?
Yeah.
So what we realized was everybody would call us when things didn't go right, and we're the ones that had to sort things out. So what we said, oh, wait a second. Whenever there's a maintenance issue, we want to let the owner know, hey, this is going on, but we've got it handled. So we would proactively reach out to them and let them know this is going on. This is what we have happening. And the biggest thing that we learn is gaining their trust and letting them know we will call you Thursday by 9 a.m. with an update. We may not have an answer, but we will give you an update. The most important part is living up to your word and actually calling them. You can still say, you know what, I don't have an answer, but I'm just letting you know we haven't forgot about you. Because most people leave a business or leave a job as an employee because they think the company or the boss doesn't care. 68% of employees will leave a company because they think the bosses don't care. It's not overpay, believe it or not. People just want to feel recognized and appreciated. And so the biggest thing is being proactive in these challenges to reach out to them. And so I don't know if that answered your question, but that's something that anything that you could reach out to them first and not have to have them call you back. That's the thing, is being able to finish it up. The other thing we used to do is we were very big in virtual assistants. So we had about 60% of our company was in Mexico running with virtual assistants. Okay. We got so good, we actually built a company in Mexico and started doing it for placing them. But what we realized is we said, okay, 80-20 rule, right? Pareto's principle, 80-20 rule. You have 100 calls coming in. 80 of them are really not important, but they have to be answered. Yeah. But do they have to be answered by the property manager? That's a skilled job, and to show someone how to log into their email, or why do I have to pay my rent this month? Or my dishwasher's not working. I want them doing the 20% that says, if we don't answer this today, we're going to get sued. But you never see that because it's buried in other phone call. You never get to that one. Or an owner says, I want to buy another property because you're so busy. So what we said is, okay, everything goes to Mexico first. All of our phone calls go to Mexico. If they can't handle it, we call them level 1. If level 1 can't handle it, then it'd go to level 2, which is the property managers. So the way now this is important because this goes back to being reactive, is we wouldn't say you can't just transfer the call. You would look on their calendar and say, okay, they're available Wednesday at 3:00. Does that work for you? I'll set an appointment. Okay. So let's say it's Monday afternoon. Wednesday, 3:00. Let me set an appointment on their calendar so that you can do this. Because we don't want the property managers to disengage with what they're doing, right? We don't want them getting sideswiped because now they gotta, now I gotta look this up. So then they see that it's on their calendar and they can review it, get all the information so that when the meeting happens on Wednesday, they're prepared. They can finish the conversation and not have to get back to them. Because if they just transfer the call, they're going to go, I got to look into this and get back to you. Now you're playing the ping pong. So once we would do that, the other thing we realized is, look, when you're dealing in real estate, especially real estate, it's very emotional, right? So people are acting on emotion. They're upset. Well, now we're giving them a kind of a cooling off period that by the time they actually do talk to our property managers, emotions have subsided for a day or so. Now we can start having a logical, non-emotional conversation. So we did that on purpose to let things settle. And so it really, really helped with number one, being reactive. And number two, look, I don't know anyone that's ever had an emotional knee-jerk reaction and said something or done something and said, yeah, I'm glad I said that, or I'm glad I did that, right? Normally you're like, yeah, I probably overreacted on that one. Probably shouldn't have said that or this. So we tried to make things a little bit more proactive and not reactive.
And I think there's so many gold nuggets in what you said. One of them is that by you having that conversation with the owner of when you're going to call them, it almost lets them know you're setting expectations. Basically, you're setting the expectation up front as to what's going to happen and when, so they don't have to be thinking on later on that night, like, am I going to be getting a call from my property manager? Are they going to be calling tomorrow? You're letting them know, which A, gives them peace of mind, and then two, it makes it so that they're not calling you back 2 or 3 times like, did this happen? Did this happen already? Because you're letting them know when it's going to happen. The other thing is the way that you set it up, extremely efficient. What I mean by that is that people are not getting distracted in things that aren't higher. At least the property managers aren't getting distracted, which is awesome. So I wanted to ask you, like, obviously at some point you built up to this, but let's say somebody's looking to do their first hire.
Yeah.
I know for me, my first hire was a virtual assistant, best hire I've ever done. They've been with me for 10 years, Steve, 10 years, and they're crucial to my business, super loyal. Who was your first hire, and what did that look like as well too? Like, how did what did you have to do, and how did you grow it from there?
Sure. Well, our first hire in the company was a property manager, and then it was an accountant, and then it was a marketing person. So those were kind of core pillars of our company, because we didn't know how to manage properties because we sucked at it. We knew that already. We didn't know accounting, and we didn't know much about marketing. So these were just things that we knew we couldn't do, right? So we were setting up the core pillars of the company. But going back to your question for a virtual assistant or anything, here's a simple way. When I coach people, and I'll give you this free nugget here. When I coach people, one of the first things I have them do is I tell them, look, if you want to lose weight, you got to write down what you eat. You want to go on a financial budget, you got to write down your monthly spending. You want to see where your time's being spent, write a time log. So I give them a 2-week task that they have to do. So these are people that pay me, they pay me to coach them. And I tell them, you're going to write a daily time log, and you're going to do 3 things. 3 things. The first thing you're going to do is from the time you wake up to the time that you go to bed, I want to track everything that you've done. I don't care if you're on the phone. I don't care if you're emailing. I don't care if you're playing with your kids, social media. I don't care. I'm not criticizing you. I just need to see what you're doing. That's the first step. The second step is the next section is you have to tell me segmenting your time. I spent 4 hours in the car. I spent 3 hours on the phone. I spent 2.5 hours on social media. Don't care. I just want to basically, let's basically combine all these productive things. And then the third thing, and this is the most important part, is I want you to write out an executive summary of 1 or 2 sentences just telling me, how do you think you did today? Now, here's the thing. So this is for people that I coach, and this is something that I tell them, I'm here to make you successful. I'm not here to be your friend. And if they don't do it, that's the last time they'll ever hear from me, because I won't coach them if they don't do what I tell them. But because I tell them, look, I can't care more than you. If you don't care, then I'm definitely not going to care, right? I'm trying to make you better and make you successful to give you what I have, right? But what I found is I want this done for 2 weeks. By the end of the first week, they are coming to me going, shit, I'm not spending as much time as I thought I was. I'm not as productive. I'm not as balls to the walls, hardcore working like I tell people. Now, here's the thing. If I tell them that, it's not true. When they actually write it down and they see it, now they go, okay, I understand that I'm not allocating my time. So the first part is we got to get a zero line. It's like stepping on the scale. We have to know how much we weigh before we start doing something. This is their zero line of understanding how do we improve the productivity of your day? And what things are you doing that you should not be doing?
Yeah.
And
you can delegate.
Now we start to delegate those things. So, and look, I've coached people on big influencers on BiggerPockets, other people that are very, very successful. We all go through the same gymnastics of doing this. And you'd be surprised at how many things we self-sabotage because we think that we're more important than we really are. Our egos have a way of getting in the way of success. Because if all of a sudden I can delegate half of my day because I'm doing stupid stuff that I don't need to do, now I go, what should I do? And all of a sudden they self-sabotage and go, yeah, you can't do it as good as me. I'm going to take that task back. That's the wrong way to do it. That's not being a leader, right? You don't, and so to be a leader, you want to embrace people, give them the vision. Your job as a leader is to grow it. Your job is to be in the front of the pack, showing them where you're going. If not, then you just have a job. And if you want to have a job, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't ever think you'll own a business if you want to have a job, right? And so
I agree.
Understanding how to delegate those things is very, very important, because once you know what the tasks are that you shouldn't be doing, I call it low-level, low-enjoyment tasks. Once you start working on those low-level, low-enjoyment tasks that you can, I always say you can automate, systemize, outsource. That's the three things you should always be asking yourself. And the first, it could be something simple like answering emails, right? I've got a virtual assistant, like you said, right? We had one that started off in our company. After we sold our business, I kept her. She's my VA now. You may have talked to her, but she's my person, right? She does my emails. She does my text messages. She books all my flights, my hotels. Are those things I could do? Yes. Is that the best use of my time? Probably not. What are the things that I need to be doing? Because the biggest challenge we have as entrepreneurs and solopreneurs is we want to get away from what we don't want, right? So, when I coach people, I'll ask them, I'll go, what do you want? Like, why are you doing this? Why are you in real estate? And they'll tell me, well, I don't want to have a job. I don't want to be told what to do. I don't want this. And so they'll go on for like 5 minutes telling me all the things they don't want. And I'll listen. And then I'll tell them, my question was, what do you want? Not what you don't want. Let's try this again. And I want you to tell me what you want. And they'll think about it. And they'll go, you know what? I don't know. I've never really thought about it. I'm like, well, if you're running away from what you don't want, that's what you're always going to have. Don't run away from something, run to something. So my point is you've got to know where you're going, and you've got to shed those things that are low level, low enjoyment tasks that are binding you up to reach where you want to go. And so a lot of times we don't know that until we put it on paper. So that's a long answer to how to do it.
No, and I think the fact that you have them self-discover that is the key right there, because obviously whenever you tell somebody something, and I have a couple of agents that work underneath me, and sometimes I'll tell them something and I could see that their mind is fighting whatever it is I'm telling them. The key is to have them self-realize. And the reality is that a lot of times somebody can be extremely busy, yet they're spending all their time in non-productive activities or activities that they can delegate. The example that I like to give, Steve, is you have two people that work 50 hours a week. One of them sells 100 homes and the other one sells 3 homes. They're both working the same 50 hours in a week, yet one of them, their results are so much higher than the others. And I think that's where people get stuck, to be honest. I think a lot of people get stuck in feeling like they're busy, but once they actually do the time study, they're really not that busy. So what I wanted to ask you is, for me, the VAs was a game changer. It sounds like at some point in your business, that was a crucial segment in your business. What tips would you give to somebody, like, or where could somebody find a virtual assistant? Maybe their first hire, because I know people like maybe they don't have time to hire somebody 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week or whatever, but maybe they could start off with a virtual assistant. What tips, what gold nuggets would you share in that department?
Sure. Well, if they want to talk to me, I can direct them in the right direction. I mean, I'm happy to do that. There's places out there, services. The first thing I would say is I'm a big believer in DISC profiling. So DISC is a personality profiling system. And every roll of things that you want to do are a relation to disc. So you have D, I, S, and C. So I'm a big believer in understanding, first of all, what do I want them to do? And what is the disc profile for that? So whenever I find virtual assistants for people, first thing is we want to know, okay, what are you going to have them do? Because if you're let's say an I, which is a very social person like me, you're butterfly all over the place, that's not an accountant. An accountant is a C. I don't know what their resume says. I hear what their discs say, because that's how I know they're true who they are, at least on the surface. So the first thing I do is I understand what is the role I want them to do. And look, you can't have an end all be all person. You just can't. It doesn't exist. It's kind of like the white unicorn. It doesn't happen. You got to find, okay, what is the task I want them to do? Is it, office managerial? Is it sales? Is it accounting? Like, what are they doing? And then what is the disc for that? And the thing is a lot of people think like, oh, I don't have enough. A lot of people will tell us like, when I place for other people or other people out there, they'll say, I don't have enough work for a person. Well, first of all, you can hire a VA for 5 hours a week, but I guarantee you, if you're doing it correctly, you could probably fill 10 to 20 hours a week with the virtual assistant if you're using them effectively. Because again, the biggest challenge is, what are you not doing because you're doing something that's not what you should be doing? So for example, if your job as an agent is to close deals, and I coach agents as well, so I'm very familiar with all that. So I would tell them like, look, if your job is to close deals, your job is not to sign contracts. Your job is not to do CMAs. That's not a money-making position. The only time you make money is when you talk and negotiate. Now, obviously there's laws and stuff. Every state's different, but if you can have them pull comps, create contracts, send emails, verify documents, get title open, you could do all those things. How many hours are you saving? Those are not money-making tasks. When I owned my company and I had salespeople, I wanted my salespeople selling. If it was not making me money, I didn't want them doing it. I would outsource it because it's not what I'm hiring them to do. And normally salespeople are horrible at paperwork. I hate paperwork. I'm bad at it because that's not my skill set. I will sub it out to a virtual assistant saying, you guys take care of that. I want to get in front of someone and close deals. That's what I do. I want to close a deal, hand it off to the VA. They file it. They get it in the system. Do your thing. And so if you start thinking of all the little things that you do, and a lot of the things that a lot of us have is, I have to do it. I have to be the one to talk to the owner. I have to be the one to open title. No, you don't. That's just your ego. That is it. That is the sure way to stay small. And you have to realize the only way to scale is leadership. And the only way you can lead is by delegating tasks and duties. That's the only way.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Even then, like, let's say somebody hires their first assistant. Sometimes I see people that they just expect the assistant to already know everything.
Yeah.
They just expect them and maybe that was even the case for me. Like whenever I hired my first assistant, I'm like, all right, you're going to input the listing on the MLS. Here it is. Or you're going to do this. Like how would you get somebody up and running from not knowing anything to get them to know everything? Or what are your thoughts on that? Once they hire somebody, what's the next step?
So we that's a great question, and it's a common challenge. And I'll tell you how we did it when we had our company, because property management is all about systems and procedures. We'd cross multiple countries doing what we were doing, and we had a very tight system. So the first thing is the first thing you got to do is you've got to create a flow, meaning a system procedure. What happens when you close a deal? Well, we got to open title. Okay, what's next? And these are just boxes in a process flow. Very simple boxes, right? Now, each one of those boxes has to link to a systems manual, expanded version explanation. So we had systems flow charts. Then if we said open title, right? Well, they don't know what that means, right? So we would go and we had a systems operating manual that explained in detail, how do you open title? Okay. Then everything inside that systems manual, we had pictures and we had video recording of how to do it. So we would back that up with a checklist. So everybody had a checklist of things they had to do. If they didn't know how to do the checklist, they'd look at the systems flow. And then if they didn't know how to do it, you didn't check off. And I learned this by being an airline pilot because we use a lot of checklists. is checklists save lives. Checklists saves businesses. So we would learn, me and my business partner, we had checklists that became very, very essential to our company because they would look at the checklist and they would go, okay, open title. What does that mean? We had a hyperlink that would take them from the hyperlink to our systems manual that they could read it, they could look at pictures, and they could watch a video of how to open title. They know how to do it. Don't check the box unless you can confirm that you open title correctly. If you don't know how to open title correctly, go to the systems manual. So that's how we do that. So you, going back to your question is that's on you to set that up. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. A lot of people think it's got to be perfect. It can be basic. And then when you get your first VA, you run through it a couple times. The biggest problem many people have is they lead by abdication. And what I mean by that is they just go, here, good luck. And this person doesn't know what they're doing. They fail at it. And someone goes, yeah, virtual assistants don't work. It didn't work for me. I give it all back. Well, it's not a bad VA. It's a bad leader. And so what I've learned is that, you either have a system problem or you have a person problem. If you're going through people, you have a bad leadership problem. And so what we did is we took our first VA and we basically had a very, very basic outline and we would run through it with her. Okay, so when we do this, we're going to do this. Now, what we learned is we gave them control to update the manual. So it's now their manual. So when we hired our next VA, guess who trained that VA? The first VA. And we say, okay, now you are training them on how you do it. And reference the manual, and anything that needs to change it in the manual. And it was this ever evolving live document. And that's how we got up to 20 VAs, with doing 60% of our business. And the biggest thing I'll tell you is when you get a VA, do one task at a time. Don't just dump everything on them. Do one task, give them that task, make sure they've mastered it before you give them another task. And so that's how we have found to be the most successful route is one task at a time, make sure they know it, understand it, can master it, and then you give them the next thing. So it's kind of like just feed it slowly.
Yeah, it's so important because I think most people just have their systems in their head and they just never actually put it on paper, meaning that they can't ever delegate it. The other thing that I see is a lot of people want to scale, meaning grow their business, but because they don't have the right leadership or the right systems and procedures, they're scaling, but they're scaling a mess. They're scaling chaos, meaning like it just like it was already a mess. It just becomes a larger mess than it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest challenge I've seen with a lot of people is, again, I asked them, if you got hit by a car tomorrow, would you be able to keep making money? Majority of people say no. And I'm like, well, then you need to fix that. It's fixable. It's not, look, we're not going to the moon here. This isn't rocket science. It's a matter of taking what's in your head, putting it on paper, running it through, because one of the things we found when we first started doing this is, and again, we didn't know how to do this. We had to learn. But when we first started doing this, we would come up with a procedure. We'd come up with this process. We'd give it to the VAs or the property managers. And after a while, they would go, yeah, this doesn't work at all. We're like, okay, well, how does it work? Well, this procedure is done here. This is done here. We don't even do this. And we're like, okay, well, does that work for you? Oh. And they're like, yeah. We're like, okay, we'll do it your way. Like we would not manage. I was never big into micromanaging. My thing is I ran everything through KPIs and metrics in our company. Or I should say me and my business partner did. And so we learned that everything was through metrics and KPIs. And we had hundreds of metrics and KPIs. But as owners of the company, we looked at 3 to 5. That's all we wanted to see because they would all feed up to us. And we knew the way we ran our metrics. So KPIs are key performance indicators for people that don't know. And the way that we would know if we either had red or green. Red was bad, green was good, right? We had metrics that we would measure against. If something was red 2 weeks in a row, we have a problem. We need to identify this. Now we dig deeper into those 100 KPI metrics from all these different people in Mexico and other cities to figure out where's the challenge. Is it a contractor problem? Is it a vendor problem? Is it a property manager problem? We could start identifying it, but the first indication was one of our 5 indicators was red. And that was the first, and that was our job as leaders. That's what we were there to do. We were there to make sure we fixed problems as quickly as we found them or before, so that they don't, explode on us.
Yeah. But let me ask you this, because we're setting up KPIs in our business, and a lot of the stuff that you're talking about are the things that I'm at that stage in my business where we're setting them up. So I'm glad that we are. I was going to ask you, what were the 3 to 5 KPIs, or maybe just a couple of the most important key performance indicators or metrics that you would track in your business that you would say at that point were important to you?
Sure. And understand that KPIs change. The metrics change depending on what's going on. So if something is a problem, it'd be metriced. So for example, we would look at very basic things things that will kill us. So we would look at saying, okay, how much cash flow do we have coming in? That's a good number, right? Mm-hmm. How many maintenance tickets do we have outstanding more than 7 or 14 days? That's an indicator, right? Then we'd say, how many vacancies do we have, right? And if it was under 30 days, it was green. If it was over 30 days, it was red. So we would look at some of these core things. So obviously, as a realtor, you could look at, I would look at, okay, how many leads are coming in, right? Because it's all about sales and marketing. So how many leads are coming in? How many of those leads are we actually converting? So that'd be another metric. So what's the conversion ratio? What's our average dollar cost? Like, what are we making per deal? Right. So first thing is if all of a sudden, and then at the end of the day, what's our revenue? So if I was looking, if I was coaching a realtor like I do, these are some of the metrics, because I want to know, okay, how many leads are coming in? Because if you have 5 leads coming in a month and you're trying to make X dollars, right? So then I can look at that and go, you have a marketing problem. You don't have a sales problem. You have a marketing problem because the funnel is not coming in. So now if you say, okay, I have 150 leads coming in a month and I'm only getting 5 clients, well, now you have a conversion problem. Marketing's fine.
Yeah.
It's the conversion. So then we dig deeper into, now we've got to start looking at the conversion sales scripts of, okay, why are we not converting these? Well, maybe it's maybe we're marketing to the wrong people. Okay. Well, now we got to change the message or change the target. And then we say, okay, now we're not making enough money per deal. Okay. Or how long does it take to close the deal? That's another thing I metric. What's the time from the time you get the contract to the time that you close the deal? What's that time frame? Because that's important to know, because now you're trying to get rid of the deal on the marketing side, right? So these are the things I look at, and again, I make them conditional to where they're red or green. I go, okay, what's acceptable, and then what's not acceptable. And it goes back to any business. You've got marketing, you've got sales, you've got operations, you got finance. You run those. If you start off with those as metrics, you can dive deeper into those. But if all of a sudden one of those is red 2 weeks in a row, I say 2 weeks, we used to look at ours weekly. We knew we had a problem. And I'll give you an example. Until we started doing this, all of a sudden we got into wintertime and we're like, man, our numbers of inbound marketing is horrible. Like, what's the deal? It's like a month. We're like, man, what's the problem? Well, when we looked at last year's data, we realized that the holidays slow down. Didn't know that. So we have to adjust your metrics per seasonality. So we can't expect that, summer's gangbusters, winter slow. So we had to change our metrics based on year prior data. So it takes you about a year to get the data to know. So again, you've got it. It's a very dynamic, but you metric what's important, and if something's on fire, that's metric. If you're saying like, man, we are just not making our revenue numbers, then you probably have a sales and marketing conversion problem. If you're doing that and you're not getting rid of them on the back end, then you have another challenge. So it depends on what the problem is in the business at the time, and they change all the time. The metrics should always be changing.
Yeah. Well, what I love about what you said, Steve, is that this applies to any sort of business. So like if you're a doctor, there are certain metrics that determine whether the business is a successful practice. It applies to dentists, it applies to restaurants, it applies to investments. It just applies to everything. So that I love about what you're saying, that these core principles can apply to anything in any different business. And a lot of times people get into business, they think it's just selling a house or doing something simple. There's a lot more of that, and it goes into stages, like you master a certain process and you start getting to the next level, and eventually they meet people like you. So what I wanted to ask you was, how important would you say coaching and mentorship and masterminds have been in your life?
Well, I would say exponentially important. I would, just giving you a personal opinion of this, I would not have the life I have now. I would if it wasn't for having a coach. And I've had 4 and 5 coaches at a time coaching me, and I've invested. Mm-hmm. If I had to be honest, I've probably invested over $500,000 in self-development and coaching over the last 20 years. But you know what? It's made me several $1 million. Yeah. So is it worth it? I would say so. And the thing is once you're coached and mentored, you can take that with you. So I can compound a lot of these things I learned. And I go back to Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan was the best athlete, in my opinion, that played the game. But he also had multiple coaches. So he also practiced 8 hours a day. So was he the best because he practiced 8 hours a day, or was he the best because he had a coach? Probably a combination of the two. Yeah. And so my thing I tell people is, if you want to be a professional, like a professional athlete, there's not one professional athlete out there that doesn't have a coach, a mentor, a trainer, maybe 4 and 5 coaches for different things, nutrition, finance. How can you say that you're a professional if you're not acting like one and getting coached and mentored like professionals do? It's you're kind of lying to yourself. So it's not, again, a lot of people look at it as spending money. I look at it as investing. I've invested $500,000, made me several million. I would say that's a good return, in my opinion, because I can keep making more money as I'm going. So I think being around like-minded people, engaging, having conversations, I think that's what this is about, because being an entrepreneur is very lonely and it's very scary. And there's really no one there to tell you if you're doing something right or wrong until you've done it and you've messed up. And so I think masterminds are great. I've got a mastermind that I do coaching. Look, I don't need to do this. I'm still an airline pilot. I do pretty well in real estate. I do it because I want to give back. I want to help other people, because I didn't have that when I first started, and it almost made me bankrupt. And so the only way that I was here is because I understood the value of being coached and trained by someone who's walked that walk already. So, you can learn it on your own, or you could just take the fast track and have someone help you. And to me, you're going to pay either way, right? You're either going to pay someone like me to learn, or you're going to paying for your mistakes and not maybe get to where you want to go. Who would want to endure that pain without a guaranteed outcome? I don't know.
Now, for mentorships, Steve, is it like a one size fits all, meaning like one coach is the perfect coach for everybody? Or does it vary based on where you're at in your business, what personality style you are? The other thing is, like, sometimes coaches have a negative stigma sometimes, at least in some people's eyes, because there are some people that are trying to coach you into doing things they have never done. They're trying to help you grow some sort of company, but they've never done it, or they read about it in a book, or maybe they're just exaggerating what they've actually done. How does somebody go about selecting the right mentor?
That's a great question. I think that, yes, the challenge with, and I don't really consider myself a coach because I'm out there in the grind, right? I'm in the heat of battle. I'm doing this too, right? So, but I think a lot of people is the barrier to entry is so low with social media that anybody can be a guru. Anybody can be an expert. Anybody can have a Photoshop paycheck on Instagram driving a rented Lambo and say they're an expert. The challenge is it's up to you, the person, to do your fiduciary responsibility to go and inspect that person. Are they really the person they say they are? Do you actually talk to testimonials and actually call them? A lot of us, we just want someone to give us the answer. We just want the magic potion, but we're not willing to do the work of what it takes. And then we're disappointed and upset that this person lied to me. Well, yeah, maybe they lied to you, but you got to take some accountability too. You could have done something better to get that person. Now, and to answer your other question, I think people come in waves. And I was taught a long time ago, your life is like a book, and your book has chapters. Chapters begin and chapters end. There's characters and people in a chapter of your life, and then you close that chapter, you go to the new chapter. So a lot of people ask me, so when we sold our management company and exited, our management company was doing great. We had a great company. The company that saw us, they were like, man, you guys are killing it. We want to buy you. We didn't need to sell. And a lot of people ask me, they'll say, Steve, why did you sell? Like, why did you sell your business? You were doing so good. And my answer is that was a chapter in my life. That chapter ended. I was okay starting a new chapter. Some chapters are long, some are short, some are good, and some are bad. And there are people in those chapters. And the people that helped me back then are not the people that I need now. So you have to learn that as you grow as a person in self-development, you are going to come across different people in your lives that are going to help you at certain times. There's people that I deal with now that I'm coached by, very, very high level people. It would have been like they were talking bear to me when I was first starting out. Like I wouldn't even know the words they were using because I wasn't ready for the message. And so you've got to make sure before you get coached, you've got to kind of know, what do you want? So when I coach people, I help people understand what is their why, right? Like in real estate, you got people that are agents, you got people that are investors, you got all these people. Everybody wants to know how to do it, right? So I'll give you an example. My son bought his first rental property at 14 years old, okay? And a lot of people ask me, they're like, how did he do it? How did he get a loan? How did he pull? I'm like, you're asking me the wrong question. What you should be asking me is why. Why did a 14-year-old want to create his own passive income? That's the question you should be asking. Once you know your why, the how is easy. So many of us are so caught up in the how. I want to learn how to flip. I want to learn how to get into syndications. I want to learn how to be a great agent. You got to be asking yourself, why? Why do you want to be a great agent? Once you know that why and you know that destination, the how is easy. So I work on people understanding the why and get them to understand, because the why is what carries you through the dark days of losing deals, getting beat up by other agents. That's when you got to pull yourself up and go, you know what? I know why I'm doing this. I just got to keep moving forward. And so that's what I work. I tell people, like, I don't teach you how to flip a house. That's not what I do. I teach you, why does it make sense to flip a house? Why does it make sense for you to sell these types of properties? That's what I get. And that's where I help people.
Yeah, that is awesome. I think that's a big distinction. A lot of people get caught up in the, how do I do this? How do I do that? Which is cool. What are some of the biggest issues? Like I would imagine that as a coach and a mentor, you have people coming to you with similar problems or things that are recurring.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of those things that a lot of people are stuck, or they come to you that maybe you're able to help them work through that? I would imagine there's certain patterns there.
Definitely. That's a great question. So one of the biggest things I've learned that people have challenges with, and you had mentioned it earlier, of being busy. People mistake being busy with movement forward, right? It's like, I tell people, it's like, you could drive around your subdivision all day and put on a whole bunch of miles, but you didn't actually go anywhere, right? So what I say by that is people have a hard time even understanding their destination of why are you doing this? What do you want? So I'll ask people, I'll go, what's the goal of owning real estate? And they'll go, well, I want to have 10 properties. I'm like, that's not a goal. That's a strategy. That's like saying I want to jump on the 405 freeway and that's it. I'm like, you got to go somewhere. So I tell people, we got to come up with a goal. So the biggest challenge people have is they don't have a goal and they don't know where they're going with their destination. They get on the freeway and they think they're making progress, but they're going the wrong way. They think they're going to Disneyland and they're heading to Phoenix. And they go, man, this is great, until you run out of gas or you get tired or you get bored and you're like, I'm not making any progress. It's like, well, you're going the wrong way. And so the biggest challenge is they don't have an end destination. I have learned the biggest challenge people have is they don't set that goal and work it backwards. And once you set the goal, now you know where you're going, you know the destination, you know the time frame. So when I coach people, I give them an example of 20-20-20. 20 properties in 20 years, paid off, giving you $20,000 a month in cash flow. It's a goal. We can revise it, but at least it's a destination. We know where we're going. It's got a time limit on it. It's obtainable. We understand the metrics that we need. So now whenever you're looking at a deal and you go, Steve, should I buy this deal? I go, well, does that match your goal? Well, it's a shithole property that gives me $300 a month in rent. Okay, well, that's not going to get you to the goal. So either we change the goal or we change the strategy. And so a lot of people don't understand that it's the goal, strategy, tactic. The strategy, so the goal is Disneyland. That's where we want to go, the 2020. The strategy is how we're going to get there. So those are the freeways. We're going to take the 405 to the 105 to the 91, blah, blah, blah. And the that's buy and hold, BRRRR, flip, syndication. Those are the strategies. Those are the freeways. The tactic is the last piece of the puzzle. Single family, multifamily, townhome, mobile home. The biggest problem is most people, they buy the tactic first and they go, okay, I got a car. What do I do with it now? And it's like, well, is it getting you to your goal? I don't know. I don't have a goal. So I tell people, if you were driving to Disneyland and you got stuck and you got off the freeway and you said, hey, I need directions, they're going to go, where are you going? And if you say, I don't know, they're going to go, well, then I can't help you. But so many people buy a house, they start going and they go, I need some help. First question is where are you going with this deal? Why'd you get it? Don't know. Well, kind of important before you leave the house to know where you're going. So that's the biggest challenge.
I would agree 100% on that. The other thing I was going to ask you, so let's say that somebody's looking to get into the real estate industry and they don't know where to begin. Obviously there's different vehicles. There's wholesaling, there's flipping, there's being a real estate agent, there's maybe working for somebody that's already successful. Let's say somebody is new. Obviously, it's going to depend on their goals. But what if you had to do it all over again? Where would you start? Would you start in the same like with property management? Would you start working for somebody that is extremely successful? Maybe learn from them, have them mentor you. Would you go into wholesaling and just hire a coach? What advice would you give in that department?
I think the best advice I would give is you've got to make sure that you educate yourself. Education is so vital. So many people, they bypass that thinking they'll figure it out on the way. And that's kind of like saying, I'll build the plane while it's in the air flying it, right? It's just going to take you to the crash site quicker. So a lot of the biggest challenge with entrepreneurs is we are ready, shoot, aim people. We think I'm just going to work hard and I'll push through. But that's why 95% of all people fail in the first 5 years because they don't take the time to build the right base and the right foundation. So I think educating yourself and understanding, sometimes it's a matter of slowing down to speed up. And I think the more that you can slow down and pull it back and think things through, you're going to have much more success doing that. So I think it's a matter of understanding and educating yourself. And, you know, you're going to know what you want to do and what you can do. And a lot of times, so many people have these preconceived notions of what they can and can't do based on what someone said or what they think is the reality. You know, getting a loan. Everyone thinks the only way you can get a loan is through a bank. Well, that's not true. You can get private money. You can take a property subject to. You can do seller financing. You can do a wrap mortgage. But most people go, well, those are creative, different ways. But yeah, but my point is it's not just one way to do it. Now, I've done this for long enough that I could look at any deal and I know all the different tools in my arsenal to know, okay, if I bought that property, I would flip it. If I bought that one, I would probably get it seller financing because there's no equity. The only way I know that is by educating myself.
Education.
So education is the key. And like I said, I coach people, I mentor them. I've got a whole education course on these things of starting out. So my course, it shows people how to go from 0 to 1. Everybody talks about these big deals, these syndications. So many people go like, I just want one deal. Like, how do I get to 1? And then how do you get from 1 to 5? And then 5 to 10, 10 to 20. So I've got a course that shows you and it walks you through how to do that. Because I think that's so important is you set up the right foundation from the beginning. And most people don't do that.
I agree. So if somebody wanted to find your course or get connected with you, how would they find you?
Well, if anybody Googles me, they'll find anything they want. But they could go to my website, steverozenberg.com. So it's ROZENBERG. And there I've got my mastermind, my courses. My course is on stevesmindset.com. So you can go there. Also, you can go on Instagram. That's Rozenberg Steve, or Facebook, Steve Rozenberg. I've got a YouTube channel. I put out one new video every single day on YouTube. So it's all, I am a big believer in education. So, you can get free education from me. Go on my YouTube channel, subscribe, go to my Instagram, follow me, go to my website. You can, if you want to sign up for the mastermind, If anybody comes from here and they mention it, I'm happy to give them a free trial to check it out, see if they like it. Awesome. I bring in some of the top named influencers in the industry because they're friends of mine and I know them. So every week, I do it every Monday, and I bring on someone new. And I bring on a lot of BiggerPockets people, a lot of big players in multifamily, single family, creative real estate, because I think it's important to get that mixture of people. Yeah. So every week I bring people on and happy to help.
I'll share something with you. You can tell whenever you talk to somebody when they really know what they're doing. And I got that feeling from you 100%.
Thanks.
Like no hesitation whenever we would ask you something. Not only that, but very precise as well too. Is there anything else that you think would add value to our viewers before obviously we end the interview?
I would just say I think it's very, very important to do a self-assessment and a self-check of one of the biggest challenges I have learned personally is that you've got to be aligned with either your business partner or your spouse. And so a lot of times and I say this very respectfully of everyone here, is as entrepreneurs and business people, we can be very selfish. And what I mean by that is we watch this podcast show, we read books, we go to these networking events, we do all of these things for the ones that we love, but we never actually share it with them. They don't know what we're doing. You're the guy that goes to the seminar on the weekend and you come back with all these crazy ideas and a notebook full of notes that you're implementing. And maybe your spouse or your children are going, I don't know, dad went to another course this weekend. I'm not sure what he's doing. So my point is that I think it's important to make sure that you bring these people in as part of the journey, because it's a journey, right? And you don't want to get to the end of the road and be alone or be miserable. I know a lot of people that make a lot of money and they're miserable and they're lonely and they wish they would have done it differently. So my point is remember, you're doing this for a reason. You're doing this for maybe your loved ones, your children, spouse, whatever. Bring them in, include them. Not saying they have to do it, but at least let them know what you're doing and include them in the journey. And I think it's something that we get so caught up trying to do it ourselves, we forget to bring the people along that we're actually doing it for.
I couldn't agree anymore. Steve, I want to say thank you for being on the show. I think this was one of the best, if not the best interview we've had so far.
Thank you.
So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being on the show. This was episode number 74. This is the Morales Group Show. This is Steve Rozenberg, mentor, coach, commercial airline pilot, and very large contributor to BiggerPockets, the leading source for real estate investors. So thank you so much, Steve. We'll stay in touch. And if there's ever anything we can do to be of service to you, we're happy to help in any way that we possibly can.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.